Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Carrie's Gardening Channel. So this year we tried something different. We tried soil blocking for the first time. And if you're not familiar with soil blocking, I will show you a quick video for how soil blocking is done. This here is the mixed up soil that we have here. This was a little bit different than when my dad did the video. This here is mixed with Miracle-Gro all-purpose potting mix, and it's mixed with Jiffy seed starting mix. So I'm gonna just get this down in the soil here some, down in the container. So this here is a 2" by 2" soil block here, and the little dibbers are in that make the spots for your holes, so you can put your seeds in. And you just take and you work this down in. And I like to pick it up like this, scrape the excess off. See, you have the nice blocks right there. Take it up to your tray and just release. And there you have your soil blocks. Okay, so like I said, this was the first time that we tried this. We did have some stuff that worked, some stuff that we learned. We had some stuff that didn't work. Some things kind of completely flopped, but it was a learning experience. And one thing that you do want to make sure is that you keep a good soil consistency. And like, being that this was the first time that we had used it, the Jiffy Natural and Organic Seed Starting Mix, that did seem to work very well for us. You just had to make sure that you had your soil nice and wet when you were trying to make the soil blocks. If it was too dry, they would fall apart. So you really want to have a good consistency for your soil so that your blocks didn't fall apart and they got packed nice and tight into the soil blocking maker. Now later on then we started trying, we tried Miracle-Gro mixed with Jiffy Natural Organic Seed Starting Mix. That worked pretty good. And then we tried Miracle-Gro mixed with Burpee Seed Starting Mix, and that worked pretty good. And then we tried, it was some kind of, what was that called? Professionals. It was a new potting soil brand that I had never used before. I believe Scott's had made it, and we tried that, and that kind of turned out disastrous. Unfortunately, that stuff, when it dries out, it doesn't matter if you have it in soil blocking or not, it gets really super hard. And it turned kind of like to a brick, and that did not work that well for us. So that was a mess there. The stuff didn't want to take water up once they got dry. We did have some issues trying to keep them wet. They do require more water than some of your plastic containers. But another thing that happened, some of our seeds are surface sow only because they need light to germinate. So your soil blocks have a little dibber, and it puts a little hole in your blocks when you make them. And that was okay because I would just fill it in. But my dad had taken the dibber out, and then we were getting these solid blocks. And what happened was when they would dry out, all the seeds were washing off the top of the soil. And my mom was planting some of them outside, and the wind was blowing, and the seeds were blowing off the top of the soil blocks. They were blowing down into the trays, and it was just a complete mess. And we didn't know it at first until the stuff wasn't coming up, or it started coming up along the sides. So definitely don't make them a solid block. If you have something that requires light for germination, just let the little dibber in, let it make the little hole, just kind of fill it in some, and then plant your seed there. That way then it has like a little concave there that the seed can sit in, and you don't have the issue with your seeds coming off the top of your soil blocks. Because we were even using the mist on our watering wands and stuff, and the seeds were just going right off the tops of them. And then when they got drier, nothing wanted to stick, and it was just a complete disaster. So that was definitely a lesson learned with that. Another thing that we learned is, and I don't know if this was necessarily the soil block's fault or not, because some of them grew really great root systems. Like when we transplanted them and stuff, all the roots came out, they grew beautifully, and some of them, for some reason, the roots would not grow out into the soil. Now, we did have an unusual year this year for planting. Like I said, some of them grew really well. Some of them, the roots wouldn't grow out. And I think what happened was we were getting a lot of rain and everything was really wet when they were planted out into the ground. So they developed shallow root systems, I believe is what happened. Not necessarily the soil block's fault. But then when everything dried out, they didn't have the deep root system. It's like when people tell you you want to make sure that you water your stuff deep, you don't just want to like surface water. The reason why they tell you that is because you want your roots to go down deep so that they spread out and they get to establish themselves in the ground. But what happens is when you put your plants out at first and you're getting all kinds of rain, they don't have to look for water because everything's right up at the top. So there's no purpose for them to really grow their roots out. And I'm thinking that's what happened. I'm not necessarily blaming the soil blocks for it because we had other crops in soil blocks and this stuff just grew and it had beautiful root systems on it. And the difference was the watering. Those were in a more controlled environment. We had to water the stuff ourselves. The stuff got watered deeper. It didn't get watered as frequently as raining every single day. So I think the rain had a role in playing with what happened with the roots not developing the way that they should have. Now, it will be interesting to see if when we use it next year, if the same thing happens. Because there were other crops, like I said, that they had awesome root systems on them and everything grew out and grew the way that it was supposed to. And the difference was, I believe, is the amount of water that it got. If it got drier, the roots had to go out and they had to search more for the water than when they're constantly getting rain every single day, just about. And then everything gets dry and the roots aren't there. They're there, but they're not down deep in. So I hope that makes sense to you, and that was something that I did notice because some of them, the deer were actually pulling the plants out of the ground, and then you could really see that they didn't have much of a root system to them. And you want your plants to establish a good root system. So I'm not blaming that on the soil blocks. Another thing, the soil blocks, they do require a lot more water. And a lot of people, you see them soaking their stuff in trays and they try and dump the water off of them. That is something I do not recommend doing. I tried it. I tried dumping the water off. It was completely disastrous. The entire tray of seedlings fell on the floor. Some of them got damaged and it made a huge, huge mess. So have to figure out something different for the watering with them. I do plan on still using the soil blocks, but keeping the consistency of the potting mix is going to be something we're going to try and focus more on. There's going to be some things where I am still going to grow them in the Jiffy Peat pellets, and there's still stuff I'm going to grow in flats like I've done for years, and there's still stuff that I might still start in plastic containers. The benefit of the soil blocks is you don't have to have all of the 4-packs and 6-packs and stuff laying around and cleaning the plastic and everything else. You don't have to do that, but there are some disadvantages to the soil blocking, like if you get too much water in your tray and you try and get that excess water off, you could risk dumping your entire thing of plants and seedlings out onto the floor, like what happened to me, and I was not too happy about that. I was pretty upset about it. And another thing was we had our soil blocks way too close together, and the roots kind of did intergrow in between each other, and that sort of made a mess when we were trying to plant the stuff. So, because you're trying to get everything apart and it all grew into like one big matted block, and that's not what you want. So definitely we have to separate them further apart than what we did in the videos when we showed how to make them and different things. That is something that we do have to, focus on. They do dry out a lot faster. That is something that I have seen with them. They do dry out faster. I was watering the greenhouses at least twice a day. And what was happening was, because everything was so wet, we had to hold everything, and it would be hot out, and everything in the greenhouse would just get dry, trying to keep it watered and everything else. So that's definitely something that they do, get drier, and they do require more attention, is what I'm going to say. I mean, all of your seedlings can dry out and get drier, but those there, they did seem to dry out faster, and it was harder to get them to uptake the water back up, which also had to do with the type of soil that we used. And that soil went dry even in regular containers. It was solid brick once it got dry. Wet and then went to dry, and it just turned into a solid brick. And unfortunately, there are some potting soils out there that do that. I loved it at first, and I thought it was really going to be good. And as we got different bags, something changed with the consistency of the soil with the different bags, and it just turned out to be a complete disaster. And it wasn't what you wanted to happen. It certainly wasn't what I wanted to happen, but you learn and you go along as you learn. Unfortunately, some stuff required a lot of reseeding, but I learned what worked and what didn't work. But I mean, other than that, they're pretty easy to use. There are just some things that you do have to watch out for and be aware of, and playing with your soil to get it right that works for you and your growing environment and climate is what you need to do. And like for me, the Jiffy Seed starting mix works. My best friend, she uses worm castings in all of her plantings that she does, and now she uses what does she use? She uses plastic trays, the plastic pots and stuff, and she uses the biodegradable containers. And for her, that works. I tried using worm castings, and they got dry. I couldn't get them to take water up again, and it was the exact same thing that she used. So it's a matter of finding what works for you with how your growing stuff is set up and going from there. And it is a trial and error thing. You are going to make mistakes with it, and that's just kind of something that happens. There are probably some crops I'm not going to put in soil blocks again, but I have till planting season to decide that. And I think that's about all I have to say about soil blocking. We had success with it. We had some failures with it. Definitely crops that I am going to be growing in it because they did excellent and they did awesome in it, and I'm going to keep using it for them. Some of the other ones, I might go back to the plastic containers, or I might try something different. It's hard to say. I'm thinking the biggest thing was having the soil consistency off and trying to keep them watered. So I hope that you found this video helpful, and gardening is a learning experience, and I've had already where even soils that I've used for years where consistency got off with it and it caused a huge problem. So checking your soil consistency and seeing like what it feels like, if it's really sandy or if it feels really gritty, trying to take notice to the different materials that would be in it is another thing. And somebody else might use the type of soil that I used and it might work great for them. It just depends on the growing setup. So that's another thing, is the growing setup that you have. In the greenhouses, it gets super hot. And, you know, in maybe some different, if you're growing them inside, it might not get that hot. So it might work for you. So it's kind of learning and trial and error and figuring out what works best for you. And like I said, we definitely have a lot of stuff that we have to try and go through and figure out, and just go from there. And one thing that I did really like about the soil blocks is they are super easy to transplant. And they are so much easier than trying to get stuff out of plastic trays and out of flats and everything else. So that is a major plus for them, because the stuff got planted a whole lot faster when we were able to plant in between all the rain and the soil being so saturated with water and everything else. And that could have been another thing that happened. If your soil is really wet when you try and plant on it, which sometimes here lately we have been forced to plant in wet soil because the soil isn't drying out like it normally would. Now we have huge tarps now to put down over the stuff, so we can keep our soil drier and then just plant our stuff in it when we're ready for it. But what happens is when you plant in wet soil, that soil can turn into a brick, literally. It will feel like it will get super hard on you, and it'll be like trying to plant stuff in a brick. And that can also hinder plant root growth, and it can also hinder water uptake and different things. So we had a lot of stuff playing into the effect this year of planting our crops. So I hope that you just found this video helpful. So if you like my video, please like, comment, subscribe. Please don't forget to hit the little notification button. I'll tell you as I put new video on. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.